Hello and welcome. A great week this week. Kevin's on holiday in Moscow visiting his cousin. So today I'm doing something completely different. It's the very first aircraft that I will have done, and it's from the 1977 Skybusters range. This one is an English Electric Lightning, and it's designated as SB21, which I'm guessing means Skybusters number 21. This came out in this rather unrealistic and boring green top and grey bottom with black undercarriages. The missiles are red plastic all over. Somebody's drawn on this one with a black marker pen and it's a bit scuffed up. All in all, in this colour scheme, I think it looks very ordinary. They've got the details on the rear tailpipes there quite accurate, but the nose wheel should be one wheel only, as shown in this picture. Because I thought that I would customise this model, the paint scheme, I went for the most attractive looking Lightning that I could find online. And it's this one here with that beautiful blue tail fin and fancy squadron decals there on the nose. So these are some decals that I've just printed out in Paint Shop Pro. I made them up from scratch just simply by drawing squares and circles and colouring them in, and then joining them together. As most of you may know, when I put my models back together I use these small screws. So as always, this model is held together by two rivets, and I'm going to drill those out, tap the holes, so that when I put it back together I can secure it with these screws. Now these screws will be going into the original posts. There they are in red. As you can see, they are quite long, so there's no risk of me drilling out through the top of the fuselage. So I'm just showing you the length of these screws and the type of drill and tap that I'm using. They're very small, they're M2 screws, so the tap is sized accordingly, as is the drill. And I'm fairly confident that I can go quite deep with these holes, as the rivets seem to be part of the fuselage. And as you can see, the fuselage is quite wide, or deep. So once I've drilled the centre hole, I take off the edge of the rivet with a slightly larger drill. I don't go too deep, because if you do, you run the risk of drilling through the lower casting, which means when you put it back together the screws will just fall through the holes. The screw heads will be too small for the holes. So I've left a tiny little bit of extra material on there because I wanted to drill off the minimum, and that has made it rather awkward for me to separate the model. But I have done this before and I know it can pull apart with just a little bit of persuasion. Just got to be very careful, nothing gets broken. There you go. Once they start, they just go really quick, they just pop, and there you go. So having a look at this now, that's how the undercarriage is held on. So it's just a square peg in a square hole. And this one's a similar design, so they just press up and slide into position. And then they're held there after the fuselage is fitted by some small metal protrusions. There's also this rather ordinary looking canopy, which is a little bit sun damaged. I'm guessing it was probably clear when it was new. Never mind, it's such a small part of the model that I'm going to reuse it and it won't look too bad, I'm sure. And that's held into position by this lump of plastic that's attached to the missile assembly. Here's a close-up of the cockpit canopy. There's some minor details on there, but it's for the scale, I guess it's all you could ask for, or all you could expect. So now I'm testing that the holes aren't too big, so I just place those screws in there, and I can imagine once they're colour coded to the bottom of the aircraft, they're going to look super special and very neat. So I'll put those aside for now. Now when I put it back together, I don't want to force it together. It's going to be freshly painted and have decals on it, so I'm just taking off any little burrs on there with a small file to make it easier to reassemble, and then the screws will pull it up tight. Now I've got this smaller drill bit. It's less than the external diameter of the screws. Reason being is I want a little bit of material left on the inside of the hole that I can tap with that tap and cut a screw thread there to put the screw back in. And very carefully here, you want to try and get it as central as possible. I thought these rubber clamps were going to be a godsend, but they're not actually suited for this purpose. I mean, they're doing the job, but they're flexing, and I haven't got a great deal of confidence in them. Now, sometimes I use my fingers to remove the swarf. Other times I use this little brush when I remember. I've got to try and get into the habit of doing that all the time. Sometimes the swarf gets on the floor and in the carpet and ends up sticking in your feet, which is not good. So now with this little hand tap here, it's like a little drill chuck with a grip on it. And with hand pressure, I just push that tap in. And the metal's fairly soft, and it's quite easy to cut a thread in there. And I always do a quick test fit of the screws to see if I've gone deep enough. Yes. These have got Allen heads on them, so the small hex hole at the top of the screw. And to put them in, what I've done is I found an Allen key, one of those right-angled Allen keys, and I've cut it off and put it in another hand chuck that I bought. And it's a lot easier than trying to spin that 90-degree piece of metal around and around. It always catches on something or falls out. Now I'm going to be wearing gloves today because I'm going to be paint stripping next. And for a change, I bought a variety of gloves just to see if there's anything better than those medical disposable ones that I use all the time. There's quite a variety in this pack. These are some blue. The blue ones are gardening. I've got the green thin ones, the yellow washing up ones, the black industrial ones. That's the ones I'm going to be using. And what's good about them is they're huge and they actually fit my hands. I've got two different disposable food cartons here, one shallow, one deep. Well, when I'm paint stripping, I've generally used the shallow one for the paint stripping and the deep one for the washing, because otherwise if I use a shallow one for the washing, when I'm splashing it around, a lot of water spills over the side and it makes a mess. So this is great. I don't have to use forceps or pliers or anything to hold the model today because of these thick gloves I'm wearing. They're actually quite good because even though they're thick, I can use them. Some of these gloves I've tried in the past, I can't pick things up when I'm wearing them. So this has given me additional freedom when I can do this paint stripping with this paint stripping gel a lot quicker as a result. And I can also get everywhere because there's no point where I'm gripping it with a tool that misses getting paint stripped. After a couple of minutes, the paint is softened and starts to blister and comes off extremely easy. As you can see, or you may not be able to see, but I'll point it out, Matchbox did not generally undercoat their vehicles before they painted them. And this paint is just straight onto the bare metal. So because I'm painting this model silver ultimately, I thought I would do the same thing. I felt that silver on silver would give the best result. So after I've paint stripped them, I'm just going to now lightly scuff the surface of the model with this brass bristled brush. This one actually might be a little bit too coarse for this purpose. I must try and get a softer one, a finer one. It's left a few minor abrasions on there. I would have preferred not to have had them, but not to worry. I've got these bronze wool pads that I can use that are really good, and they don't leave any damage on the model. They just actually polish more than scour, and they seem to last forever. Like, they don't disintegrate as much as the steel wool ones do. You use those once and throw them away, but this one here, I think this is the third time I've used it, and it's only a very small clump from that large bag that a subscriber sent me. It does a really good job. Obviously it's not like chrome, but now once again, these little bits, you've got to be careful of them. If they get in the air, if they're airborne, they get blown around in the spray booth. If they get in the carpet, they stay there generally for ages and ages and come back to haunt you. So now I'm just showing you a general look at the condition of the model and just having a look to see how it's going to look when it's back together. Anything's got to be better than that green and grey Matchbox colour scheme. Now I was a bit pushed for some silver paint today, so I'm trying this Mr. Metal, I think it's called. Can't even remember why I bought it. It's been on the shelf for a while. I was looking a bit gluggy. Some chunks in there. I just persevere and keep mixing and mixing and mixing, and then I check it out. It actually seems like it's all come good. I think that's good enough to paint with. Jump straight into it. I'm going to give this model 2 coats of silver today. Light coats. And my first coat has gone on and I'm quite happy. It looks very good. So fingers crossed the second coat's going to go on as well. I just hang the model up there to dry on those magnetic clips that you may have seen in a previous video. So next up I'm going to do the belly of the aircraft. Again, I apply 2 coats, 2 light coats. And you know what? I'm happy with that. Now this undercarriage is extremely unrealistic and is uncharacteristic of Matchbox toys. When they did the cars, they were extremely accurate and looked just like the real things in miniature. If you look at this picture I'm using as guidance, you can see that the rear undercarriage legs were attached to the wings, not the fuselage, and they had a steel or aluminium in middle. As with the nose wheel, it should be a single wheel and not 2 wheels next to each other like this is. It's almost like they had no clue what the real thing looked like. So definitely not up to their best standard. Now I just give these a quick clean in some hot soapy water to get any grime that might have accumulated over the years off, and then I can spruce them up with some black wash and silver paint. And even though I don't think I'm doing anything to this, I'm just giving the canopy transparency a wash. So these are all the plastic parts, drying on a piece of kitchen towel. I'm not very happy with these missiles. This aircraft carried 2 types of missile, the de Havilland Fire Streak shown here, or the Hawker Siddeley Red Top, neither of which look like these missiles. So it's kind of like they've said to the designer, make up your own missiles for this. If they look like missiles, that's close enough. But as I said, they don't really resemble anything that was carried on this aircraft. But I'm going to just paint them white so they look a little bit more missile-like and give them a red tip, though that might make them look a little bit more realistic. Now I've got my black wash out and I'm just going to blacken these tyres before I paint the silver bits in. So they should look nice when they're dry. It only takes a couple of minutes because it's a wash, you see. It's just a little bit of X1, Tamiya Gloss X1 and some thinners mixed up so it's all runny, and I apply it with a soft brush. And I'm using my soldering helping hands to do this. I don't often use them to hold parts, but they come in handy. Now, as you can see, the spine or the dorsal section of the fuselage here and the tailplane, the rear rudder, is blue. So I'm masking it off with this 10mm, this very thin Tamiya masking tape. And I'm trying to ensure a really good seal here along this edge so that there's no paint bleed occurring after I paint it. I'm really taking my time doing this because it's such a small model and there's just a fine line between good and bad when you're doing this. So today I am masking this off using my 3M tape. I'm covering the whole plane with masking tape now, just so that I don't get any overspray on areas where I don't want it. And at this stage I'm just masking around the frame of the cockpit. I thought that would look good blue, but I ultimately end up repainting the frame silver. I'm going to paint it with this Tamiya Blue X4 gloss paint. But before I do that, here's a little tip. I'm spraying it with some clear lacquer. Now the theory is that the clear lacquer is going to bleed into the edges of the tape and seal it. That way when I apply the colour will have nowhere to go, and hopefully it should make a sharp line. Whilst I was about it, I gave the fuselage a quick coat of the clear coat also. I was going to do it later, but seeing as I had it out, I might as well do it now. Here's a quick shot of my compressor that I use with my airbrush. For the blue, I'm using Gloss Tamiya X4 today. And I use these little shot glasses and coffee stirrers and some Tamiya thinners. Get it pretty runny. Oh, this is where I left my needle out. Left the needle out of my airbrush. If you can see, there's a hole in the end of it. And as I start spraying, I'm thinking, geez, this paint's flowing out really quick. Maybe I thinned it too much. It was only after I rewatched the video here I realised that I'd made a mistake and actually had no control over the flow of the paint at all. Just the air pressure only. I had to do it twice. It's something to do with like the turbulence created around something. When you're spraying it at this small scale, the air must whip the paint away from certain places and you end up with heavy areas and light areas, so you usually have to do it again. Here's my box of little people that I use for my diorama end of shots. Here's the one I picked for the pilot. I've made up a little fake helmet. And here's some that you may recognise from my other videos that I've done before. All these colours here I'm going to be using to paint minor details on this model and on the figurines. So there's a lot of paints, chops and changes and paintbrush washes in this makeover. Here you can see I painted the missiles white and added some red tips. Here I'm showing you the wheel assemblies after I've applied the silver paint, which will hopefully, as I said, make them blend in with the fuselage and look less obviously wrong. That's my theory. Just trying to do the best I can with what I've got. Now here's my little pilot man, and I think he turned out really good. He's an old pilot, not a bold pilot. He's got the grey hair. You don't get old bold pilots, they always end up stacking or crashing into the ground. I had a go at painting the nose cone and the tailpipes gold, just to add a little bit of variety to the paint scheme. Guess what? It's time to put the model back together. So I place it on its back and I start off with the windscreen, or the canopy. That's held in place by the missile block. And before I put the belly of the aircraft on, I have to insert these wheels into their respective positions. That was a little bit fiddly for me with my fat thumbs, but I got there in the end. The upper and lower fuselage fit together fairly well, but there is a bit of an obvious seam. It wasn't as obvious with the two-tone coat, but now it's all the one colour. The seam seems to have been enhanced. But I'm going to put some stickers on it, and that might hide some of it. Now this is just I was playing around here, taking some photos. I wanted to see what my little men look like in position. The one who I'd cut his feet off to fit him in a car, the guy sitting on the wing. I had to make up some new boots for him. which was a magnifying glass job, as was cutting out these very small circles and decals. And in the end I tried to shortcut by using a punch, a 9mm punch and a hammer, and I had a few failures, but I also had a few wins, and they turned out quite good. Not a totally professional looking setup, because I don't have the means to produce high quality decals, so I'm still learning, and I'd hope to think I'm getting better each time. To put them on I need various things: a soft brush, cotton tips, some good tweezers, some offcuts of kitchen towel just to use to wick away excess moisture, and some of this decal setting solution, which I'm kind of warming to. Never used it before, started to use it in the last couple of models, and I'm quite liking it. Add 1 drop of washing up liquid to the bath of water here. It breaks the surface tension and helps the decals sink to the bottom, otherwise you're chasing them around on the top, and you try to grab them and they move away. It's quite frustrating. That was a tip somebody sent me, a great idea. 1 drop of washing up liquid makes life a little bit easier. I'm trying to get these in the exact position as per another photograph that I looked at online. And annoyingly, the seam there, or the join on the wing, the rounder overlaps both of those joins. It'd be nice if it was a nice flat area to work on, but it's actually got those grooves in it. But that's where they've got to go, so I'm putting them there. Even though it would be better if they were higher up in that wider, flatter section. The edge of this decal has folded over onto itself, but by dragging it on the leading edge of the wing I've managed to straighten it out again. I'm taking my time here because I'm looking at the other one and trying to match it up so that both wings are a mirror image of each other. Now, after I've put the decal on the aircraft, you can see I'm using those little squares of kitchen towel that I've cut out, and sometimes I feel the need to roll a cotton bud over just to try and steamroller the thing into position so it sticks. It's knowing when to stop as well, because you can actually wipe the varnish coating off the top of the decal, and then the paper starts going all fuzzy, and then the ink bleeds, and oh, it's a nightmare. But on this particular model I had win-win-win. All these stickers went on really easily. And on this one, if you're going to have a go at this, make sure you've got 1 red square on that decal facing on the top and 2 on the bottom. You could put that on upside down, you see. This one here on the rudder. I hope I got this right. I couldn't really work it out. See the red diagonal band. I didn't know whether, well, on this side it's on the front of towards the front of the aircraft. I didn't know if on the other side it should be towards the rear of the aircraft, but for the purposes of symmetry I actually did the other decal in reverse, so that the red is on both sides is facing the front of the aircraft, if that makes sense. So I'm using another small piece of kitchen towel there just to try and get the excess moisture out of that crease where the rudder fits onto the fuselage. Tends to collect there. So after I put the decals on, I give them a top coat of some clear lacquer to seal the edges. Now here's a reminder of what I started with. I hated this colour scheme and those red plastic missiles. They had to go. I wanted this thing to look more realistic. So this is as good as I could get it. Though I think the decals really stand out and really add the finishing touch. I painted the tailpipe gold and the nose cone gold, and I put red tips on the missiles.
Hello, aircrew here.
Ah, Jeremy, it's Winko here from the head shed.
Oh, hello, Rupert. So good to hear from you. How are you, old chap?
To tell you the truth, I'm a bit brassed off. There's a bit of a flap on. A damn Rusky is poking his red nose in our front window,
Do us a biggie. Take one of the air chairs up and blow some hot air up his skirt. That should make him think twice. This is most important, Jeremy. What I mean is, it's a matter of national security.
Understood. I've just opened a new packet of hobnobs, so I'll get a quick cup of tea first, and then I'll be right on it.
Top hole, old man. Now don't cock it up. If you do, it will be my arse on the line. Remember, your cock up, my arse.
Righto, sir. Toodle pip.
Sierra Bravo 2-1 to control. Sierra Bravo 2-1, go ahead. Sierra Bravo 2-1. Aircraft is Russian FFF-95. I'm coming up on his port side. Speed 600 knots. Angels 30, heading 270. Over. Sierra Bravo 2-1 received. Be advised, maintain current heading until near fuel. Over. Sierra Bravo 2-1, copy out. Sierra Bravo 2-1 to control. Control receiving. There is movement in the cockpit. Stand by. You've got to be kidding me. There's a damn koala flying the plane.
This is Marty from Marty's Matchbox Makeovers, saying thanks for watching and goodbye.